And the same here. If you're a good idea, you're funded. Any more questions? I love tautologies. Anyhow, the problem is that you have asymmetric information. And as I asked my friend David Audrey, a distinguished small business professor, what do you mean by asymmetric information? He said, look, Chuck, it's really hard for small companies to get money. It's hard for entrepreneurs to get money, and it is even harder for women entrepreneurs to get money. And if you're a minority woman entrepreneur, you are indeed an optimist. The basic problem is really simple. Forgive me the simplicity of this, because I said I talk to the Senate with some frequency. So we put about 150 billion in new ideas in here. But new ideas, as you've heard when you talk to your professors, are new. And it's not always, they're not always able to attract support. And by the way, that's equally true in large companies, as well as with early startups. So you need capital to transform these ideas into innovations, and once innovations, you can begin the process. A point that I emphasized with the Senate just the other day is you can have very good ideas that end up here. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. But the world of markets moves very quickly. One of the senators asked me, well, what about venture capital? Well, what about venture capital? It is one of the great assets in the U.S. innovation system. We have the best, broadest developed market in the world, and some of our venture capitalist friends say that if only we could make money at it, it would be even better. The problem with venture capitalists, they have the same problem. They have limited information on new firms. Many people don't like to admit that there's a fashion in the venture industry. One year it's bio, next year it's nano, next year it's solar, and you so have to be in those industries. There are contrarians, of course. There's also the empirical fact that venture capitalists over the last few years, over most of a decade, have been moving away from early stage startups. They've been moving downstream. And they're doing that because they lose money downstream, and they certainly know they'll lose money upstream. One of the things that worries me is when I talk to our friends in Europe who decide that what they need to do, since the private investors won't invest because they think it's too risky, that they want to provide public funds to encourage the private investors to go farther. To me, this is like being in Canada when the ice is starting to melt and the local Canadians say the stream is too dangerous to walk on. The EU officials say, well, we'll do a fund of funds and we'll go up together. No, actually, you're all going to lose the money. And it's a challenge that they don't want to hear. The point that I'd like to make here is that this is a seed stage venture. It's 1.7 billion. This fell off about 37% in the 2009 crisis. It's gone back up from about 17.7, so you're getting an increase, but it was at 28 billion in 2007. My point here is just that the really early stage funding is really quite limited. So there are a number of ways to go across. Let me just talk briefly before I close. You know, John Kenneth Galbraith always said that about halfway through your talk you should say in conclusion, if only to give your audience hope. It's, so a key point to keep in mind is the first money is the hardest. The program focuses essentially on students and professors and people and companies that want to start a firm. They have an idea, but they need some early money. Until recently, we've had a stable program, which is really helpful. Some of your colleagues have worked in the ATP program, which was truly a Pearl of Pauline story every year about whether the program was going to exist or not. It was always being zeroed out, then saved at the last moment. But that's not a great way to run an R&D program. People look for stability. If you go to your vice president of research, you want to be able to not have to convince them the program will be there. You just want permission to apply to it. It's a large scale. It started small, but we are putting in almost, if you include STTR, almost $3 billion a year. And you know the Washington joke, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. And the multi-billion dollars enable you to have a portfolio effect. What's not understood, it is also highly decentralized. Not only by the 11 agencies that use it, although 5 account for about 96% of the funding, but it's decentralized within the Department of Defense, it's decentralized within the NIH. This is how it works in terms of best practice, and this is relevant for state programs as well. Remember I talked about the importance of small businesses with good ideas? You have to also keep in mind that small businesses have a lot of bad ideas. So you need a very tough selection process. This makes us different from the French here. OCO tends to help a small company because it's a small company. We help them because they've qualified in a tough phase 1 selection process. On our recommendations, they raise the amount from 100K to 150K and up to $1 million from 750. Only about half of the phase 1s get selected for, of successful phase 1s get selected for phase 2. Sometimes, well, it's interesting because sometimes companies stay here sort of in the churn, picking up multiple phase 1s for a while they're trying to perfect something, and then they move to phase 2, or they get private sector investment that comes in. There is non-SBIR government investment, usually acquisition and defense, that often picks in. What we have found also, to our surprise, is there's a lot of private sector investment because this is considered due diligence. Now, I know I'm speaking in some cases to very experienced SBIR writers, but if you have ideas and you're working in a research area, you should start working with Dr. Haller on applying for SBIRs. Why? Because we've done a lot of research on this, and one of the GAO reports pointed out that the principal determinant for success in SBIRs is applying. It's a little bit like basketball. Shooting is an essential component. One of the great things about the program, by the way, is there's no recoupment like they do around the world. We give you the money's yours, the IP is yours, the company's yours. The control of the company, unlike with venture, is yours. It's undiluted equity. And if you pick up multiple SBIRs, your valuation goes up very substantially. There's the promise of a market, and you're worth more. So before I close, there are a couple things here. SBIR to help convert the research you have here. More focus on economic development administration grants to build out your infrastructure. The DOE consortia are an opportunity, which I take it you're deeply aware of. Now, in conclusion, this is what we have to do as a nation and what you have to do as a region. You want to make sure you're keeping your talent, drive more cooperation between universities and industry. Make sure that you're growing and supporting these companies. Your senator needs to know that you want this, this SBIR bill passed, which is pending. And of course, you need to paint yourself green. Not that you don't actually believe in that, but remember I said there are fashions in venture funding? Well, there are fashions in Washington funding as well. And green nano is going to be funded more than old nano, even if it's the same nano. What can you do? Obviously, we need to educate ourselves. Collaboration. Make sure you're putting the money in. I'm deeply concerned about the way the Assembly seems to be treating you. I think there has been inadequate focus. I respectfully suggest that, Pradeep, on attracting more federal funding. The fact you've been able to do it on your own is great, but there is also a great money machine down there. And as long as you, like with SBIR, can keep control, it's worth drawing it in. And partnering together is essentially what we're here to talk to you about it. We're here to do that because everything we want to do in this world to make it a better and safer place and a good place for our children requires innovation. Only too often for our governors and our senators, innovation is an afterthought. And I would argue across the whole space, from medical technologies, the healthcare system, the environment, national security, the fun of driving electric cars. All of this requires innovation. And I'm very pleased, honored, in fact, to be with a group of outstanding innovators. And I look forward to see what you're going to do in the near future, and I look forward to cooperating with your institution. And I thank you for the chance to work with you.
Yes, Chuck, first of all, thank you very much. I'm sure you're aware of it, and it probably depresses you every bit as much as it depresses many of us, that many of the ideas that you've put out here are at odds, shall we say, with political views that probably we could turn on an AM radio and hear right now.
Let's not do that.
What is the reality? Everything that you've said, or well, I mean, maybe not everything, but vast majority of what you've said I agree with. But how to affect change when the political climate is so incredibly skewed to, you look at the debates on global warming, reducing the rate of increase means you're cutting something, and then the dreaded tax issue. Please comment on that, because I'm confused as to how to move forward on the right things to do.
Why don't we go get a drink? I share that anguish, and sometimes driving in the morning. You know, the National Academy of Sciences is a research-based institution, and the basic idea is you bring the best and the brightest in the academic world and from business world and from policy experience. You get policy formulations which are grounded in when possible, in empirical research and in good judgment. If you're dealing with people, as the French say, who don't know and don't want to know, that model doesn't work very well. Let me just say that I was alive in '96 when they were going to abolish the Department of Commerce, which they want to do again. I guess they don't want their weather service anymore. Although some of you may not remember the great joke about the congressman who said that he didn't need the weather service, he could get it off the Weather Channel. No, I think we're going into some turbulent times. I think what you have to do, and I really mean this, is you have an outstanding senator. Make sure your representative is fully apprised of what you want, and that you want dogged defense. You know, there's a tendency on the Democratic side, I think, to compromise on a bad idea, and then compromise again, and then compromise again. I think you need to be very tough. I think you need to work with the constructive Republicans, and there are constructive Republicans. You need to use your industry participants here. And in a sense, one of your disadvantages is that I'm sure there's a lot of federal funding inherent in the work here, but there is a tendency sometimes in industry to see what they've done last rather than the antecedents. You know, I just want the government off my back. They've never done anything for me. I'm an internet entrepreneur. You know, I mean, they don't. It's like teenagers. They don't get where the internet came from, or why it's here, or who did the physics. That, you know. So advocacy with the industry groups, advocacy with your, I think with your local government. Maybe we should fix our own home first. Engaging with your state assembly in every way possible, I think, is really, really important. I would love to be able to take a talk, an abbreviated form of this talk, to the state assembly. I don't think they have any idea. You know, when you go out to, I spoke in the state of Washington, as I mentioned. I was out in Irvine, California in January, in Orange County, talking about other countries' investments and our tax cuts. I mean, these are smart people. They weren't comfortable, but they got the message.